Can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah, well, I can hear you, Mayor Buchanan.
Okay, thank you.
The user who just joined with screen name Helping Jillian, we're just trying to confirm if you are a mayor or perhaps a public delegate. Could you let us know? All right, Helping Jillian, I'm moving you back to the waiting room. Mayor or Councillor Bryce Williams just joining, Chair. I think it looks like we're live, so I think you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I'll call to order the Mayor's Council meeting. I want to begin by acknowledging with respect the Indigenous nations on whose treaty and unceded territories we are fortunate to live, work, and operate. I have a motion to adopt the agenda. It's been approved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And approval of the public meeting minutes of June 27th, 2024. That's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Okay, that'll take us to our next item, which is election as vice chair. Mayor Hurley has resigned his position as vice chair of Mayor's Council due to his election as the chair of Metro Vancouver. And as noted to you by email, we will conduct an election to have a new vice chair. If that new vice chair is a current Mayor's Council delegate to the TransLink board, we will immediately follow that election with another election to fill the vacant spot. I believe the process for this has been sent to all of you, including how to use Zoom for balloting. And I'm going to turn it over to our recording secretary, Carol Lee, to run the election.
Mayor West, and good morning, everyone. Just a quick reminder of the procedures for the election. Any council member may be nominated, and the nomination must be seconded by another council member and must be accepted by the nominated council member. If more than one person is nominated, a vote by secret ballot will be taken via Zoom, and the person who receives the greatest number of votes shall be declared elected. And the election will be determined on the basis of one vote per council member and delegate present at the meeting. We'll start with the election of the vice chair, who will hold office commencing immediately until December 31st, 2024.
I'd like to nominate Malcolm Brody.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Mayor McDonald, are you seconding the nomination?
Yeah, I'll second that nomination.
Thank you. Mayor Brody, do you consent to the nomination?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'll make a second call for nominations. And I'll make a third and final call for nominations. May I have a motion to close the nomination period?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? That's carried. Mayor Brody is acclaimed to the office of Mayor's Council Vice Chair. Vice Chair Brody, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you everybody for your confidence. It's a very challenging time that we are in. I'm sorry that you didn't get a chance to hear my riveting speech, but I'll phone each one of you and make up for that. So anyway, thanks to everybody, and let's get to work.
Thank you. As Mayor Brody is currently a Mayor's Council designate to the board, we will now have an election for the vacant Mayor's Council designate to the board position, and that position commences immediately, and the successful candidate will hold office until April 30th, 2025, or until the 2025 investment plan is approved, whichever is earlier. May I have a nomination for the designate to the board? Mayor Buchanan?
I'd like to nominate Nicole McDonald.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Mayor McDonald, do you consent to the nomination?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. I'll make a second call for nominations. Mayor Woodward?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Mayor Rumi.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. That's by Mayor Leonard. Mayor Rumi, do you consent to the nomination? Mayor Rumi?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. Make a second call for nominations? Oh, sorry, third call for nominations. May I have a motion to close the nomination period?
So moved.
Moved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? That's carried. So we'll start with Mayor McDonald. Would you like to address the Mayor's Council regarding your nomination?
Great, thank you. Yes, I would. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for my nominators and to my fellow mayors for the opportunity to say a few words here this morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor West has worked hard over the last couple of years to increase Mayor's Council's representation on the TransLink board. We are all aware and agree improved governance, efficiencies, and accountability are necessary for TransLink's sustainability into the future. I will work closely with our chair and the other mayors on the board to advance our collective aim. I have no individual agenda for my own city, but want to ensure TransLink's management and the board are working in alignment with the region's mayors and our collective vision. We are all aware that the next year will be critical for our region as we work together to secure a new investment plan, which is absolutely necessary. I have the time, skill, and commitment to be a strong representative for all of us. And I just thank you for your time and consideration, and I hope I gain your support.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. Mayor Rumi, would you like to say a few words?
I would, thank you very much. And thank you for the nomination. This is, when we look around what's going on, the one thing that is the most important to me right now is the ability to be open and transparent. And I'm looking for your support. For me, serving my community has always been a passion of mine. And while we wear our mayor hats, we also have to look at the regional aspect of things. And I'm eager to contribute my skills and commitment to improving our regional transportation system. Being end of line is something that we need out in Maple Ridge, but I also recognize the challenges that we face across our region. Throughout my career, I've always dedicated myself to doing the right thing, including being open and transparent. You may not know, but in my corporate life, I've opened over 150 franchise restaurants. And when I look at those experiences, you do have to start to balance what and how you communicate to people. So communication is critical to being able to move forward and being able to put a positive spin on the transit authority. And being on the board allows me the opportunity to do that. There's a lot of great work going on, and I commend Mayor Brad West on the work that he's done as chair, and I have no doubt that Malcolm will do a fantastic job as vice chair. So I'm looking for your support to get onto the board, and let's get this done. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi. We will now conduct the vote by a Zoom poll. Gemma, I'm going to ask you to move all of the staff and observer and guests to the waiting room, please, and then launch the poll for the mayors to vote. This may take a couple of minutes to sort out.
Yep, confirming that's done.
Thank you. Can you launch the poll, please?
I think everyone who needs to be in the waiting room is in there.
Yes, I'm just checking the list. Yes, that's
Yep,
fine. Thank
we're
you.
good.
Yep. Sorry, can I have assistance on the poll? Yes, Councillor Kirby-Young, are you on your phone?
I am, yeah.
No.
Okay,
Wait.
could,
Is the
Go ahead, Mike.
open?
If you're on the app, when the poll starts, it should pop up in your screen, Councillor Kirby-Young.
That's what I thought, but I'm not seeing anything pop up.
Yeah, we
Sorry,
haven't,
everyone, I got kicked out of Zoom. I'm just reloading it.
Oh, it's not loaded yet?
Okay.
Okay.
yeah. And Councillor Kirby-Young, if you're on your phone, I'm not sure if you can vote in the poll. If you want to text to me, I can add it to the result.
Okay, and is your number
Okay.
in the chat somewhere?
604, I'll give it
Okay.
to you, 604.
Yep.
375,
375
1020.
1020. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Is the poll up or no?
Sorry, I'm just loading it now.
Okay, just making sure.
And Gemma, you'll need to move Chair West, remove his co-host privileges, so he'll be able to see the poll as well.
Yeah. Okay, I'm launching now, so hopefully it will show up on everyone's screens.
Yes.
Yep.
Is everyone able to see the poll on your screen?
Yes.
People are
Yes.
voting. Just as a reminder, you'll need to make your selection, consider it, and then press submit in the bottom right corner.
I'm just noting that I think I can do this online. So
Oh, good.
I'm just going to
Yes.
try that so that my vote isn't double counted.
Perfect. Yes.
Thanks.
You were able to?
Yeah, you should be able to do it on web browser.
Okay. All right, I think we've got all the votes in.
We do.
Yes. Yeah. Give me 1 second, I'll just confirm. Yes, thank you, everyone. I am pleased to declare that Mayor McDonald has been elected to the position of designate to the board. Congratulations, Mayor McDonald.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate it, and I appreciate my colleagues' confidence, and I look forward to working with the other mayors on the board, as well as our chair and vice chair, and eager to get to work. Thank you, everyone.
Gemma, you can let everyone in now. Thanks. And Chair West, back to you.
Okay, well, that actually went very smoothly. Well done on doing these things online. I know there's always a little tricky. Thank you, everyone who stepped forward, who put their name forward. And again, thank you to Mayor Hurley for his service as vice chair over the last almost 2 years. And appreciate that the unity of this group is a big contributing factor to the success that we've had. So appreciate everyone's support as we move forward. We'll now move to public delegates, and we have 2 delegates today. And so first is Aisha Irfan.
Hey, good morning, mayors. My name is Aisha Irfan. I'm the VP External at the Alma Mater Society, or more commonly known as the AMS, which is the student union here at UBC. Today, I am here to speak to action item 5.1, the report on potential transit service impacts. The AMS represents one of the highest cohorts of transit users in the region, 61,000 post-secondary students. UBC's latest 2023 transportation status report indicates that nearly 80,000 trips a day are made to and from campus by bus. The majority of these trips are students. This generation of students is more reliant on public transit than ever before, underscoring the urgent need for sustainable funding solutions. The current fiscal crisis at TransLink is not just a financial issue, but a threat to the very public transit services that thousands of UBC students rely on daily. If not addressed urgently, the potential service cuts will disproportionately impact students, many of whom depend on public transit as their primary mode of transportation to get to campus. While we believe that the SkyTrain extension to UBC is one of the only viable long-term solutions for serving travel meaningful demand to and from campus, we are well aware that it will take many years to deliver, especially now that the Broadway subway project is 3 years away. For many UBC students, public transit is not just a convenience, but a necessity. With 53% of UBC students regularly using public transit, any reduction in services would severely disrupt their ability to attend class, participate in campus activities, and honestly, to just be a student. In the report, it is highlighted that due to the magnitude of the financial gap, transit reductions would be in the range of 45 to 50%, including the elimination of entire routes for buses. The average daytime population at UBC includes 400,000 students, 11,650 staff, and 4,150 faculty, all of whom would experience significant impacts of this decrease in transit services. These numbers are here to highlight how dramatically these potential service cuts can impact the life of not only students, but staff and faculty that also commute to campus. The AMS urges and supports TransLink and the Mayor's Council to continue working together with all levels of government, specifically provincially, to find a new sustainable funding model to avoid any potential service cuts that can severely impact students. Yesterday, I spoke at City Hall during the Standing Committee on Finance and Service, and it was really great to see councillors unanimously vote in favor of adding more bus lanes on really busy bus routes here in Vancouver, most going to campus. When our municipalities are doing their part in supporting efficient and reliable transit, it's critical that the province does as well. The AMS looks forward to supporting the Mayor's Council and TransLink to ensure that we can prevent these potential cuts from happening and stay on track to deliver the Access for Everyone plan for UBC students and the community around us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for coming and speaking to the Mayor's Council this morning. Much appreciated. Our next delegate is Dennis Ager, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mayor West, and thank you, Aisha, for that really amazing presentation. I'm going to try not to go over all the same stuff because it's literally all the stuff that we care about too. I'm here for Movement. It's a relatively new group of transit riders in Metro Vancouver. I was at that same meeting with Aisha in Vancouver. It was a really exciting win for bus lanes in that city that I hope we can recreate in all 23 jurisdictions in Metro Vancouver. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. I want to reaffirm to all of you and to the senior governments that hopefully are listening that transit riders need the network to grow, not shrink. With the cost of living so high, we can't contemplate asking riders to go out and buy a car in 2024, when the average price of a used car is now at $40,000 in this province. I think we also all need to engage with the goods movement industry on this topic because the changes that we're discussing today are going to be so catastrophic to anyone that uses our roads to make a living. But ultimately, I've been talking to political experts on both sides of the aisle, and what's clear to them is that a big, exciting vision for better transit is a political slam dunk. I'm talking about not only ensuring that there are no cuts in transit, but really inspiring people, calling upon that feeling of being in a European or an Asian city and thinking, wow, I can get anywhere on transit and it's so easy. We can have that here. I've been doing this advocacy stuff for 8 months now, and it has been stunning to me that I haven't met or heard from anyone serious that has any substantial opposition to transit, to spending money on transit. I'm being told that the political context today is very different from that fateful referendum back in 2015. Whether motorist, business owner, or cyclist, people seem to understand that getting cars off the road is beneficial to everyone. Projects like the SkyTrain to UBC and BRT to Guildford and South Surrey are just no-brainers these days. So yeah, that's my spiel. I also just want to say that I saw some mention in these plans for fair discounts for people with low incomes, and I really want to reaffirm how important that is. That's something that we've seen in our peer cities, and it's just such a no-brainer to offer fair discounts for people with low incomes. No one should be turned away from transit because they can't afford it. But yeah, there you go. That's me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to Mayor's Council this morning. We'll now move on to the report of the chair. I know we have two very consequential reports in front of us, so I don't want to take up too much time because I know we'll have a significant amount of discussion about both. The first report paints a picture of what our transit system could look like if the next provincial government doesn't come into office ready on day one to work with us. The consequences that are outlined in this report are hard to imagine, and yet I think it's incredibly important that we're very upfront with the public about the reality that TransLink is in. The second report proposes to all political parties the mayor's ideas about how we can work together to avoid those scenarios that are outlined in the first report and build the transit system that this region's residents need and deserve. I hope that these two reports taken as a pair will help the public and other politicians understand what's at stake, the future of transit in Metro Vancouver and the livability of our region. And I hope it generates a commitment from the next provincial government about how they will work with us to save transit and keep our region moving forward. None of us want to paint scary pictures or engage in doom and gloom, but I think we have a responsibility to be very straight up with the public in this region and for them to understand the reality that we face. The good news is that there is enough time to avoid this situation. We have a plan as mayors that we've come together and supported unanimously. It will allow us to meet the needs of this growing region, to meet the needs of people who call Metro Vancouver home, no matter what part of this region you live in. And so the two reports make the case for the why and the how to solve the significant challenges that are in front of us. And after this meeting, I hope we hear clear responses from all of the provincial political parties, but of course also from Ottawa as well. We've talked a lot about how the federal government has not stepped up in the way that they need to. We saw in the last week the re-announcement of the Permanent Transit Fund with a couple of new details, but no new additional money, and really a repackaging of something that has been announced several times over the last number of years. And quite frankly, it's just not good enough, particularly when the pressure that our system is under right now stems from so many decisions that are made in Ottawa with respect to population growth. And the idea that the federal government would wash their hands of those decisions and not step up in a meaningful way, I think is incredibly irresponsible. And so we continue to call for a permanent transit fund that is at a scale to meet the needs of our region and that is accelerated so we can get on with these projects, not in 2 years, but today. So I'll leave my report there and I look forward to the discussion on the two items that are to come. Can I have a mover to receive the report?
Move.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Okay, that will take us to 5.1, which is a report on potential transit service impacts. And I will turn it over to Kevin Quinn and Sarah Ross to present this report.
It's great. Thank you, Chair West, and thank you, Mayor's Council, for having us here today. Greatly appreciate it. I'm not sure if we can get slides up on the screen. Thanks, Mike. I'll go ahead and get started. You know, as you'll recall, at our last meeting, we released the results of our independent efficiency review and comprehensive management action plan. And this review really affirmed our dedication to responsibly managing taxpayer dollars and provided areas for improvement, many of which we've already implemented. Building on these recommendations, we also announced $90 million in cost reduction and revenue generating initiatives. And while these efforts will help us optimize our operations, we know that these actions alone will not be sufficient to close our funding gap. Relief funding from the government of BC has been pivotal in protecting service levels since the pandemic, which has resulted in TransLink being a leader in ridership recovery for major transit agencies in Canada and in the United States. However, this relief funding is coming to an end in 2025, and transit in our region is at a crossroads. And as CEO, I'm committed to the highest level of transparency and responsibility for our operations. And so today's report prepared at the request of this Mayor's Council, provides a clear and honest assessment of the reality we're facing in Metro Vancouver. It outlines the potential service cuts we may need to make should adequate funding not be secured before we reach our fiscal cliff at the end of next year. Next slide, please. The current funding model we rely on is unsustainable. And while funding transit has always been complex, in the last several years, forces outside of our control have put us in an unsustainable financial position. Declining gas tax revenues have been felt and been impactful as the region shifts towards electric vehicles faster than anticipated. Fare increases have been held below the rate of inflation to support affordability for customers. And with such high rates of inflation, costs are increasing, like the cost of buying fuel and new buses. We also have major SkyTrain expansion projects underway, and we're starting to absorb the startup costs now, prior to them generating revenue. Together, these factors have led us to a projected average annual funding gap of around $600 million beginning in 2026. And without urgent financial intervention, we must begin to consider what transit service could look like in the not so distant future. Next slide, please. The scenarios contained in this report are hypothetical for now, but they outline the real and tough choices that could lie ahead. This report is not intended to cause alarm, but it is important we're transparent with the public, the mayors at this table, the province of BC, and the government of Canada about the problem that we're facing. Sarah will go into more detail shortly, but some of the transit service impacts we're looking at could include cutting bus service in half, including canceling up to 145 bus routes and all night bus services. There would be almost no transit services operating in Langley, White Rock, South Delta, Port Coquitlam, Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, and much of the North Shore. It could look like reducing SkyTrain and C-Bus services by up to 30%. West Coast Express could be eliminated completely. Handy Dart service could be offering medical trips only. And we'd have to consider eliminating the local government funding program, which invests in road maintenance and local transportation infrastructure upgrades. I want to reinforce that we're doing everything we can within our power to avoid the catastrophic scenarios illustrated in this report. Next slide, please. Should these scenarios ever become reality, the 900,000 people who rely on our transit system each week would be impacted, with many needing to find new ways to get around the region, drastically impacting congestion, hindering our ability to meet transit-oriented housing policies, and preventing us from supporting this region's unprecedented growth. More than 675,000 people would no longer be within walking distance of transit, and 265,000 jobs would no longer be accessible by transit. Additionally, the ripple effects of these cuts would be felt long after the initial reductions. If these scenarios ever become a reality, ramping service back up would be incredibly challenging. Reinstating routes and rebuilding capacity would require significant resources and time, potentially taking up to 10 years just to return to current service levels. So regardless of if you take transit, the impacts of these cuts would be felt by everyone in the region. As people lose access to transit, congestion would worsen, and we anticipate that these reductions would increase congestion 20% as tens of thousands of new cars push into the road, impacting everyone's ability to get to work, school, medical appointments, or even just the grocery store. With our region facing record-setting population growth, housing affordability crisis, important GHG emission reduction goals, and the need to compete economically on a global scale, now is the time to be rapidly expanding, not considering scenarios that reduce transit. In the coming months, we'll be releasing another report that outlines the economic impacts to the region if these potential transit cuts become a reality. It will detail the broader repercussions on our economy, from increased congestion to reduced accessibility to jobs and services, underscoring the critical need for immediate and sustainable funding solutions. Next slide, please. I want to be clear to our customers that we are doing everything in our power to fight for the reliable and robust transportation system this region needs. To solve this crisis, we must rethink how transit is funded so we can meet the needs of the growing region and avoid the disastrous consequences of reaching the edge of our financial cliff. And I want to be clear that we need support from all levels of government to secure a new sustainable funding model. We remain committed to working alongside these partners to ensure transit has sustainable sources of funding for generations to come. I'd like to now introduce Sarah Ross, our Vice President of Transportation Planning and Policy, to present the details of the report. Sarah.
Thank you and good morning. Although the 2024 investment plan approved in April identified that substantial reductions in transit service would be required without increased revenues, we had not done any planning to identify what would actually be required to balance our books. This report provides illustrative scenarios only at a conceptual level to demonstrate the scale of potential reductions and potential approaches to those reductions, as well as the negative impacts those reductions would create. Detailed planning for potential reductions has not been undertaken. And this analysis answers at a high level, how would we reduce our expenditures by around $600 million a year? Next slide, please. First, we always want to minimize the impacts on customers. And so our analysis assumes a dramatic reduction in the work and scope of TransLink. We'd undertake only the work required to safely operate and maintain remaining services and programs. All work relating to advancing the Access for Everyone plan, expansion, upgrades, and improvement to meet the pressing needs of this region would have to stop. We'd have to stop working with municipalities and other partners on initiatives like transit-oriented housing. We'd stop all community and customer outreach, providing customer information beyond what is legally required. Reductions in all areas, programs, and services would be expected. For the purposes of this analysis, we've assumed this would save $175 million a year, which is on the order of a 50% reduction in expenditures. TransLink's role in multimodal transportation would likely need to be essentially eliminated. In these scenarios, we'd stop the payments we provide to municipalities for ongoing operations and maintenance of the major road network, which is essentially all the major arterial roads in the region. This would reduce TransLink's costs by around $41 million. But I'll note that the roads will still need to be maintained, and so this would essentially be a download of costs to local municipalities. The money we provide local governments for road safety, reliability, and active transportation, it's already not currently funded beyond 2025. And even with such a dramatic scale back, that still leaves a remaining gap of approximately $385 million, leaving us no other choice but to reduce transit service. And of course, the challenge becomes that as soon as we start cutting service, we lose fare revenue. How much fare revenue we lose depends on when and where those reductions are made. But the more fare revenue we lose, the more service we have to cut, and you enter into that negative downward spiral. Next slide, please. We've developed two different scenarios. In the first scenario, which we call maximize ridership, the focus is on providing reasonable service in the more densely populated parts of the region where we serve the most customers. So this scenario puts the emphasis on preserving the most productive services. It serves the most ridership and retains the most fare revenue. Yet still, it is a massive reduction in transit service, 45% reduction in bus, with over 140 bus routes eliminated entirely. Only 90 routes would remain. SkyTrain, frequency and span of service reduced. Same for the C-Bus. West Coast Express, which is one of our higher productivity services, would be reduced from 5 trains to 3. And HandyDART, which we never measure in terms of productivity, would be reduced to about 2/3 of today's levels, serving medical trips only. And in the second scenario, which we call maximize coverage, we focus on providing basic access at low frequencies to most parts of the region. This spreads transit service levels out across more of the region, but the total amount of reductions are deeper because we lose even more fare revenue in this scenario. 50% reduction in bus, only 85 routes remain. 30% reductions in service on C-Bus and SkyTrain, service ending earlier and running less frequently. We'd stop running the West Coast Express entirely. And for HandyDART, this would be the same as under the other scenario, about 2/3 of what we provide today. So we'd be faced with the terrible choice of whether we want to provide a reasonably useful service to only the most transit-oriented, higher density parts of the region, or do we want to be a region where our transit is more of a lifeline service, providing basic access at low frequencies, but to most parts of the region. Right now, we provide a highly convenient service with lots of ridership while also providing access across all of the region. Right now, there are very few places in this region that aren't accessible, at least in some way, by transit. But let me show you some maps that really illustrate this. Next slide, please. In this maximize ridership scenario, the network would remain mostly intact, certainly with some reductions in the higher density areas of North and Central Surrey, North Delta, Richmond, Vancouver, Central Lonsdale, Burnaby, and New Westminster. But vast parts of the region, almost all of the North Shore, the Northeast areas of the Tri-Cities, Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, South Surrey, White Rock, East Surrey, and the Langleys have basically no service at all. Next slide, please. This is the same scenario, just shown in the reverse, with the red lines showing all the routes that would be eliminated entirely under the maximized ridership scenario. 675,000 residents are no longer within walking distance of transit service, and 265,000 jobs in this region are no longer accessible by transit. And the impact is felt most acutely by people who are low income, people of color, seniors, and youth, where 1/5 to 1/3 of people in these groups that typically use transit more no longer have access. Next slide, please. This second scenario, maximize coverage, you can see that more parts of the region have lines on the map, although the total amount of service is less than the other scenario. What the map doesn't show is that most of these routes would only have service every 30 to 60 minutes. Next slide, please. And so again, the red lines show everything that is removed. So the service overall in this scenario is less usable, but better access is maintained, but still it remains that 500,000 people would no longer be within walking distance of transit, and 175,000 jobs would no longer be accessible. And it still has a big impact on people who are low income, younger, and older. Next slide, please. And what the maps don't show is that this service would end a lot earlier than it does today. Right now, most of our routes run until at least 9 p.m. and many run well after midnight, and we also have overnight service on a handful of key corridors. Service at night is and the late evening and at night is well used. The train and the buses are often very busy with people who have shift work in the service industry or hospitals, or who are taking evening classes or coming home from an evening out. And under these scenarios, we'd have to scale back hours of operation so that much of the service would end as early as 8 p.m. and we'd certainly have no very late night or overnight service. Next slide, please. Transit reductions at this scale would impact everyone, regardless of whether you actually use transit yourself. Certainly, those people that keep on using transit would have a dramatically worse experience, more overcrowding, more waiting, fewer options. But the impacts will extend far beyond transit users. Today, over 900,000 people take transit each week. A good proportion of them will have to shift to driving, some right away and others as soon as they are able to buy a car. And that will make congestion worse by about 20%. And more congestion increases costs for moving goods and services and makes driving time longer for everyone. Owning and operating a car is more expensive than relying on transit. That makes affordability worse. Employers will have a harder time hiring workers, particularly in areas no longer accessible by transit, but also in places like hospitals where typically a high proportion of employees commute by transit. And when grocery stores and hospitals and shops and warehouses can't hire enough people, that impacts everyone. We have further analysis underway to quantify these regional economic impacts, and I anticipate we'll be reporting back to you on that in the coming months. In closing, I do want to reiterate that these are hypothetical scenarios prepared as you requested to illustrate what the potential impacts would be to the region starting in 2026 if a resolution to our structural funding gap is not confirmed. I certainly do not recommend either of these scenarios. The scale of these reductions would take a decade to recover from, even after the funding was available. We can't cut so dramatically and then just turn it all back on. It would take years to hire back people, reinstall bus stops, replace the buses, when in fact we should be expanding service to meet the needs of the rapidly growing population, to support transit-oriented housing, to give people sustainable and affordable options for getting around. I hope this analysis is helpful in demonstrating what I think you all understand, that transit is an essential service to our region. Finally, I'd like to express appreciation to Matt Craig and his team for their work on this analysis. Kevin and I are happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for presenting that to us. And it goes without saying that obviously an incredibly stark report, a reality that I'm sure all of us want to avoid. I think it is important that the public have the same information that all the mayors have. You know, we're receiving this at the same time as the public, understanding that this is the reality that TransLink faces. And we do need to work collectively to ensure that not only is this avoided, but we go in the opposite direction that we all know we need to with respect to adding service and meeting the needs of the people of this region. So I appreciate you putting this together, because I think it's important that we have this information, but I think it's even more important that the public have this information and that people have the straight goods about what the situation is and what we're working collectively to try to avoid. With that, I'll go to Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you, Mayor West. I want to thank staff for the report. It's very unfortunate that our staff have to spend their time to produce a report like this. I want to reiterate one comment, though, that we are not meeting the demand today for service in our region. We have tremendous overcrowding throughout our system, and we are not meeting the demand. Neither option that the staff have shown us is palatable to anybody in this region. This is not a new situation for us at TransLink, and we need sustainable funding to anybody permanently. But what we do need is operating funding. Can you explain, like the bus cuts again, we're talking a 45 to 50% reduction, Sarah, Ms. Ross. So that means mothers, children's daycares, trying to get to all those appointments that people, doctors and all that, will no longer be able to make in a safe and manner, may be forced to walk kilometers to get to those appointments without this. Is that correct?
It is correct that it would be very impactful on all people who use transit, as well as everyone else in the region. And there would be many people who would have to walk farther or likely beyond a walking distance. As I noted, 675,000 people in one of the scenarios are no longer within walking distance of any transit service.
And as a former bus driver, I would hate to be a driver with this overcrowding situation of people trying to get on buses that can't carry them, leaving people behind. It would be an untenable situation. I just wish we would not keep getting into this situation by the governments above us not giving us the proper tools to properly sustain the funding in this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is Mayor Sager.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to share with you a little distraction this morning. We've just received notice that at 11 a.m. this morning, one of the provincial political parties is going to make a major announcement on transit and transportation issues. I'm not at liberty to say what they're going to announce, but it's going to certainly open up the discussion. I thought it was fitting to share that. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. We'll see what gets announced at 11. Mayor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Really appreciate the report. I think, you know, what I was talking to Mike, Mr. Buda just a few minutes earlier before the meeting. I intend to take this public report to our next meeting of council. And I would suggest that it'd probably be a good thing if we all did that in order that we can get more messaging out and to our local papers. I'm still seeing not too much reaction to it, but this is for Delta and in most cities. This is just going to be absolutely, you know, a real problem. It's going to be devastating for us, for our economy. Right now, the traffic at the George Massey Tunnel heading north from 3 o'clock on, it is at an all-time high. Even though we're in summer periods, there seems to be more traffic happening. And we don't need bus cuts. We need more buses, as was mentioned before. We need more services. I'm just having my staff also do some analysis with regards to traffic counts at the tunnel, and I'll pass them on to the South of the Fraser mayors that are involved with the George Massey Tunnel traffic and Richmond, of course. But I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to be taking this to council, ensuring that the people of Delta know about this, and they will be alarmed. They would definitely be alarmed. So I'll pass that copies of that report on when they're prepared for next meeting at council, which will be around the first week, or sorry, September 9th, which would be a pretty opportune time to have it go out. Thank you, everybody. And thank you
very
for preparing the information.
Thank you, Mayor Harvey. Mayor Buchanan.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to Mr. Quinn and Ms. Ross for their sobering presentations or presentation. And I would echo Mayor Harvey. Our next council meeting is not till September 9th. However, I do think that that's leads us into an interesting time in the province. And so I do encourage everyone to also take it to their next open council meetings. I guess, you know, echoing my colleagues as well, it's very frustrating to find ourselves in this position again. And, you know, for some of us, we haven't been at this table as long as others. But if we talk to perhaps our longest serving mayor council member, you know, this is not something that's new. This is something that happens over and over and over again. And I think, you know, we'll all say, everybody will say, we want to make sure that everyone can move safely and efficiently throughout our municipalities and our region. But, you know, the time for talk is over, and we need to see some action. And, you know, as grateful as I believe we all are for the funding that that we are given, that they're giving us, is welcome. That is an investment. We need, as we all know, to have a new funding model. For too long, this has just been piecemeal, and we get to the sort of end of the road every time over the decades where it comes to a crisis moment. And, you know, here we are again. And at a time when other levels of government are not asking us to deliver, but telling us to deliver a record amounts of housing units and homes for people, extraordinary immigration numbers that we haven't seen since Confederation, an economy that is thriving at the moment, but is going to see itself crippled. We need them at the table to commit, and not just to talk and say it's important to them, but to actually commit to the fact that public transit is a core essential service. Public transit needs a new model, and they need to commit to that new model, and they need to be at the table with us and not always have us going cap in hand to try to cobble this together. I think we have an excellent plan in place. We've put our investment plans together. We had a scenario where we knew where our funding sources were going to come to. And unfortunately, you know, crises of global pandemics, et cetera, impact our ability sometimes, as well as other factors beyond our control happen. And we cannot continually go out to through our property taxes, et cetera, to try and save the day. This needs to be solved with all levels of government at the table. And we need to get that story out and tell that story and weave that thread through the pieces or the dots so that people understand whether you use transit or not has been described today. This will impact you. If I look at, you know, and this is going to have catastrophic impacts across the region, but if I look at the North Shore in particular, where I, you know, serve, I don't think I need to tell anyone across this region the impact that congestion has on the North Shore. So when I hear that transit would be cut to bare bones on the North Shore, and I know that 77,000 people live within a 400-meter walk to transit, just imagine the increased numbers of people that would need to resort to a vehicle in order to try to get to where they need to go. CBus service that was just expanded in order to support many people who start early, including one of our biggest employers on the North Shore, which supports the national economy, which is C-SPAN, started early so that those workers could actually get to their jobs that start extremely early in the morning. And so we add those people to back onto the road. So this isn't something that I think people need to or should be going, oh, here they are again. This is, we are at a place where I think we've done all we can do. The other levels of government need to stop saying that they're doing their part. They need to come and commit for the long term. We cannot wait till 2026. And at the end of the day, if they can't be at that table, I think we need to hand this back over to them and help make them solve this problem on their own. I think we are doing all we possibly can. And I'm willing, as I think we all are, to be at that table, but we need them to be at this table as willing partners for a long-term solution, not the short term. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Buchanan. Mayor McDonald.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair. Again, yes, thank you to staff for this reality report, really the stark reality. I agree with all my colleagues' comments so far, and I just wanted to stress Mayor Harvey's comment about bringing this to councils. I think we've done a good job of trying to celebrate some of the progress and projects, and we've got BRT out there in the mix and things like that. We need to show really what the potential devastating consequences are straightforward to our communities and stress the need for the higher levels of government. We cannot minimize the impact of this on our local economy or our regional economy, congestion, climate, housing. It just goes on. And I find it startling that we're questioning the foundation of our transit system when there's such a focus on housing right now, and they're basically interchangeable. When you hear comments regarding West Coast Express being cut dramatically or potentially non-existent, and that's part of our transit-oriented development requirements, it just doesn't make any sense. What I also wanted to just comment on is I really liked Councillor Asmunsen's point. We can talk about cuts and routes and all that type of examples, but really this is about the real life scenarios. And it's the people. It's the can't get to childcare, can't get to their jobs, you can't get employees to your businesses. You're going to have people stuck in traffic. And I think that's an element we need to really try to pull out for our community members and have the reality of that showcased. So just again, thank you so much. And I don't think we can stress the potential damaging consequences of this and the need to just continue to focus on that sustainable permanent funding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Brody.
Thanks, Chair. I want to highlight, first of all, I think this is the best staff report and most complete staff report on this subject that I've seen in my experience. I agree with the comments of all the previous speakers. I think they've really hit, they've really hit the point. Unfortunately, Mayor Buchanan is correct. This is the same conversation we have had almost on a yearly basis, except for maybe during the COVID times where everything got changed. I just want to, though, add in a point that Councillor Kirby-Yung made at a committee last week. We talk about the province's insistence on densifying our neighborhoods and using transit-oriented density, which I think we all support. But if you don't have transit, you can't have transit-oriented density. It is that simple. And so surely the governing party can't miss that point. And we just have to emphasize it over and over. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mayor Locke.
Thank you. And I was just going to echo what Mayor Brody just said about transit-oriented neighborhoods. We're already doing that. We are pushing hard to do the builds on our transit-oriented neighborhoods. So this really does take the wind out of all of those sails. But I did want to also just take a moment to recognize the work that TransLink has done to reduce costs in a very dramatic way. And I also wanted to recognize the good work that you, Mayor West, and Mayor Hurley have done in making this such a outfront issue for the public, because I totally agree with you. We need to keep everything as transparent as we possibly can. I find at a time when all we're talking about is affordability, all the other orders of government are talking about is affordability, affordability in housing, in food. Transportation is probably the number 3 thing for every single person. And I can tell you in Surrey, this is only going to hurt those people that are already struggling. This is not going to be, this is going to have huge impacts on people that are newcomers. And Surrey has the most newcomers to the province. This is going to hurt low-income earners. This is going to be devastating to them and to students. And so the short-sightedness of this by other orders of government who are so good to bring in so many newcomers to our region, and so many people that are in need of public transit, especially. This is just incredibly short-sighted, and I think it's going to be devastating to all of us, certainly for us in Surrey and the South Fraser. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to sort of add a couple of comments that haven't been said. And I think one is that this is not alarmist. I don't think we want to be viewed as, well, this happens every year, et cetera. Like, it is different. I think there is a prevailing confluence and winds of the fact that you're coming out of a pandemic, and you have a directly inverse relationship between the fact that ridership has rebounded to an incredible degree, which should be a success story in our region relative to the rest of North America. And we have some of the highest ridership on buses, et cetera, throughout. And so I think the confluence of those pieces with the economic affordability challenges, the struggle for people to rebound in the economy is really important. I do want to add one thing that has, in terms of having one unified voice and championing around this, is that people will sometimes blame immigration and say, well, then we shouldn't have as many people coming in. And I just really want to emphasize that we need those people to fill jobs that we don't have. We have an aging population. And Vancouver, we had a health strategy approved this week. It is staggering to look at the proportion of our population that will be age 55 and over. We will have far more people in those cohorts and in the over 75 range than we have ever had, as long as that demography has been tracked. And people will not only be older, they're living longer. And so we do need to replace ourselves. And one thing that concerns me is that I think the Mayor's Council needs to have a responsible voice against pushing back against any contrary undercurrent of racism or other tropes that, well, we just won't have the people coming in then, and we don't need that. And so I think I sort of asked everybody to kind of pay attention to that and call it out, because it's very easy to turn this into an anti-immigration piece. And while that is not our main mission here, our main mission is to deliver on transit. I do think that we really need to talk about the fact that we need the positive economic indicators. People need to be able to come here and they need to be able to live here, which means they need to be able to get around. They need to be able to go to their job. They need to be able to help a small business open. They need to be able to get to their midterm, as we heard from speakers at Vancouver Council yesterday. Lots of real life examples. A student that was late missed half of the time in their midterm, right? Somebody that couldn't get there in time to pick up their kid from daycare. Like these examples, small business owner that can't keep their store open, like these examples just abound, and the economic impact is significant. So it doesn't matter which political party is talking about it, it hits everybody. It hits it on social equity, it hits it on economics, it hits it on livability, it hits it on climate, it hits it on congestion. And yeah, I do appreciate Mayor Brody raising that point that you can't have transit-oriented housing without transit. So thank you.
Thank you. Director McCutcheon, I'll go to you. You haven't spoken yet, and then Mayor Buchanan, I think you're looking to speak again. Director McCutcheon, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair West, and I won't echo my colleagues' comments. I would agree with all of them. This is such a depressing but realistic report, and I'm very thankful to staff for the work that's gone into this. We've talked, Mayor Harvey spoke about, this going to councils, and I think that's a great idea. I just also want to speak to the public. I know we had delegations today, including the AMS, who were speaking to us about this report, and I would just encourage them and anyone else who finds this as depressing as I do, and I'm sure that's most people in the region. When we're going into this provincial election, just to be bringing this up with candidates and thinking and asking them directly about sort of what they would be doing to try to address this, because regardless of the party, it's it is funding that we need, as others have said. So just a note to the public.
Thank you very much. And Mayor Buchanan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, I just wanted to say one thing or two. I would agree with Councillor Kirby-Yung just in terms of all of what she said, but the natural increase across Canada, we do need immigration, because it's pretty much natural increase is declining. But the other I wanted to say was, if people think that this is kind of a tactic or that we are using in order to get funding, and they'll go, well, let's wait and see what happens. What I will say is, we are living this right now when it comes to housing. We saw governments, other levels of government, get out of housing in the early 90s, and we are now living the nightmare of having to try to catch up. And as Ms. Ross said, we don't invest and we don't move forward, it is not going to turn around next year or the year after. It will take a decade or more. So we cannot afford to find ourselves and try to live the experience to see, well, let's just see what happens. Because we are living it right now where we cannot build enough in order to support the people that we have here and the people that we absolutely need to come and welcome as new neighbors and people to be contributing members of our community. So I just would like people to think of that piece, because humans are funny. We like to sometimes just wait and see and let's live the experience. But I would say we are living that right now with housing, and the point that was made, you cannot have transit-oriented development with or transit or that housing without the transit. And so let's not repeat past mistakes and find ourselves in a situation where we find ourselves in such a dire state that's going to take the next generations of politicians to try to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. As we conclude this item, I just want to reiterate, I think, the importance of us being very open and transparent with the public and providing the public the same information that we're receiving. Not to be alarmist, but so people understand the reality. The fact that we still have time to fix this, I think is very important. But we have to be upfront about the scale of the challenge. We have faced challenges before, and we have been able to come together, sometimes at the 11th hour, with the provincial government to find a way forward. And I know we will do so again, but I think it's important that people understand the scale of the challenge, the reality of the situation, and have all the same information that we have. Because if for some reason we don't have the provincial government, whoever that may be, step up and provide the funding and the tools that are necessary as part of an investment plan, and if TransLink had to go down the path of significant service cuts, the public would rightfully ask, well, why didn't you tell us about this? Where did this come from? Why is this all of a sudden just happening? And they would absolutely be within their rights to make those comments and ask those questions. So I think we have a responsibility to be open and transparent, to provide information as we receive it. And that's what we're doing with this report. And now that we understand and we have very much out in the open what we're dealing with, I think we can continue our work that we have been working on for quite some time, which is to secure a new agreement, secure a new funding model, to not have to be doing Groundhog Day over and over again, but getting to a place of sustainability where we can just get on with delivering the projects that the region needs and not have to go through this exercise repeatedly. So I think that is our fervent hope. This has been kicked down the road for decades, quite frankly, with respect to a funding model that has become increasingly outdated and already was outdated. There's no more road to kick the can down. And so now the real work has to happen to get a solution. And I think our residents deserve that. And I know the mayors are very united in delivering that. So thank you, everyone, for your comments. If I can get a motion to receive. It's been moved, seconded. All those in favor, opposed, and carried. Okay. We'll now go on to a report of the Mayor's Council ask of provincial parties. And I'll turn that over to Buddha.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as you intimated actually in your remarks during the report from the Chair, this report, item 6.1, which was sent to you last night and is on our website as well, is really meant to be seen as a pair with the report that we just completed. In fact, back in April, when you asked TransLink staff for the report that we just went through, asking staff to describe what exactly might happen if we are unable to come up with a new transit funding model by next April, you also asked staff to come up with the proposed solutions to senior governments. That is, you didn't want to just identify the challenges that we're facing, but you also wanted to identify the opportunities and potential solutions to addressing those problems. So that's what this report, item 6.1, is, at least part of that. This report proposes a draft open letter to leaders of BC's political parties that we would send upon your approval today, that outline exactly those solutions to the challenges that we just heard in the previous report. It identifies 2 actions to save transit in Metro Vancouver, and then it includes, I believe it's 4 questions that would be seeking responses from each of the major parties running this election, so that in September, we can bring back those responses to you and share them with both you and the public, so that voters also see the respective visions from each of the parties on how they intend to address the challenges that we've just outlined, and more importantly, or just as importantly, to begin delivering the transit expansion plans that you've approved in the Access for Everyone plan. So I'm not going to, the report that was sent to you last night and that is on the website has a 1-page cover report and then a 4-page open letter that we propose to send. And just as background, for the last several federal and provincial elections, all the way back to 2015, the Mayor's Council has sent letters to parties and candidates asking them to commit or to indicate how they would support and invest in Metro Vancouver transit and transportation. So this is part of a long history of practice in the Mayor's Council wanting to be sure that the public is aware of what we think the next government needs to be ready to deliver in terms of transit and transportation. And then the parties as well have that information, and they're able to then communicate their own visions back to the public. We actually launched a public engagement campaign, in fact, almost a year, just a bit more than a year ago, called the Access for Everyone campaign, to do exactly that, to communicate to the public, to communicate to all parties well before this provincial election, what's at stake, what the opportunities are, and what's required to actually deliver on the Access for Everyone plan, which includes addressing this structural deficit that and the consequences of not doing so that we just heard in the previous report. So I'm going to I've just got 3 very brief slides that are taken right from the open letter. This open letter, again, sent to all political that we would send to all political parties following the meeting if you approve this letter, outlines 2 actions that we're seeking that we think need to be delivered to save transit in Metro Vancouver. First one is we're asking all parties, and I should say not just provincial parties, but I think this applies to both the current federal government, and then obviously there'll be an election next year, so the next federal government as well. We're asking all parties to commit to increasing transit service immediately to address overcrowding and record-setting population growth in Metro Vancouver by funding the first phase of the Access for Everyone plan starting in April 2025 in partnership, obviously, with the Mayor's Council and TransLink. As we've said many times, provincial leadership and federal leadership is required to help ensure that transit in this region can catch up with record-setting population growth, to address record-setting overcrowding on our transit, ongoing and worsening congestion on the roads. We heard Mayor Harvey talk about congestion, midday congestion in the tunnel. To support transit-oriented housing legislation, several mayors have flagged this. Meet 2030 climate targets. Certainly relevant given the terrible events happening in Jasper right now. And to make life better and more affordable for residents and businesses. So that's action 1. We're looking for all parties to essentially commit to supporting and delivering the Access for Everyone plan, actually the same way that the current government has already done so. In fact, they signed on to the Access for Everyone plan when we approved it in 2022. Now it's time for the next government, we think, to do the same thing. The second action we're looking for from all parties is to commit to create a permanent $3.4 billion per year Access for Everyone fund indexed to population growth and inflation that will provide the senior government contributions we need to deliver the Access for Everyone plan over the next decade. So that includes that $3.4 billion, includes $500 million per year in new sustainable operating revenues for TransLink to actually operate at current service levels. So that means filling that structural deficit, as well as to begin expanding our transit operations, our transit service that we've outlined in the Access for Everyone plan. And we're not being prescriptive in how this could happen. The current government's provided a very good model over since 2020 in the operating funding support that they've provided since the beginning of the pandemic. This is an essential component of our plan, is to more than double bus service. There are certainly capital requirements around buying new buses and building new bus depots, but principally that's significantly increasing our operating costs, and we need a new funding model to do that. The second component of this is to invest $2.9 billion per year from senior governments, both federal and provincial governments combined. We're not prescribing how that should be allocated, but we think that the provincial government really needs to make that, the next provincial government needs to make that commitment to ensuring that capital funding is there for us to start delivering the Access for Everyone plan over the next 10 years. And I know some will ask or suggest this is a huge number. Just to put it in context, the current Ontario provincial government has a rapid transit strategy. So just for rail-based transit, commuter rail and subways in the Greater Toronto Area of $61 billion over the next 10 years. So yes, it's a bigger region, but that's that's more than twice, and that's just for rapid transit. Doesn't include all the other transit that's happening in that region. And of course, billions are spent on highways and healthcare and hospitals. The critical utilities, the critical infrastructure and services that we need to service both current residents and future populations. The third component of this Access for Everyone plan or fund, is to create a provincial program to provide transit fare discounts or exemptions for low-income youth, adults, and seniors. And then the final component of this Access for Everyone fund is to review Translink's governance structure to ensure that elected regional mayors are accountable to the public for decision-making at the agency, commensurate with your growing responsibilities and revenues. So these are two actions we're looking for the next government, all parties, to commit to. This is the questionnaire that we'll be sending to them, and again, we'll be asking for responses back to us by mid-September, so we can report them back to you at the end of September at your meeting. I think it's September 25th-ish, and so that we can also share those results with the public, so that voters can make their own determination as to how various parties are ready to take action to save transit in Metro Vancouver. That's my report. Mr. Chair, there is a recommendation on the first page of this report to ask the chair to send this open letter to the leaders of the four major provincial parties and all candidates in Metro Vancouver.
So moved.
Okay, recommendation's been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, pardon me, that will take us to a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I think we'll just need